Elon Musk walks into court without a lawyer, facing a billion-dollar lawsuit that could cripple his company. The judge laughs at his amateur defense, while Magnatech's attorneys present ironclad evidence. But what no one realizes is that Musk has a secret plan, one that will flip the entire case upside down in the most shocking way imaginable. Before we continue this incredible story, let us know where you're watching from. If you enjoy stories like this, subscribe to the channel, because tomorrow we have another inspiring story you won't want to miss. The heavy wooden doors of Courtroom 7 swung open, and the air inside crackled with tension. Reporters huddled in the gallery, their pens poised, their cameras flashing, as Elon Musk stepped into the room. Alone. No team of elite attorneys, no high-painted legal defense, just the billionaire himself, dressed in a dark suit, his expression unreadable. The murmurs rippled through the crowd like an electric current. What was he thinking? Was he out of his mind? This was no minor dispute. This was a high-stakes, career-defining case against Magnatech Industries, one of the most powerful technology corporations in the country. The fact that he had chosen to represent himself was nothing short of madness. From the judge's bench, Beatrice Thornwald watched Musk take his seat at the defendant's table. She had spent 30 years on the bench, long enough to have seen it all. Tech moguls, Hollywood celebrities, corrupt politicians. None of them intimidated her, and certainly not Elon Musk, a billionaire with a reputation for arrogance. When she saw the world's richest man fumbling through a stack of wrinkled papers, she almost laughed. "Mr. Musk," she said, adjusting her glasses and flipping through her notes. Her tone was clipped, sharp, exuding the authority of a woman who had spent decades keeping order in her courtroom. "My records show that you are representing yourself in this case. Is that correct?" Musk stood, his hands lightly gripping the table. "Yes, Your Honor," he replied, his voice even, calm. Judge Thornwald raised an eyebrow. "You are aware that this is a corporate patent lawsuit worth billions?" A faint smirk touched the corners of Musk's mouth. "I am." The room tensed. The arrogance of this man. The whispers grew louder, people elbowing each other, exchanging incredulous glances. Who walks into a legal battle of this magnitude without a legal team? Across the courtroom, Dominic Reeves, Magnatech's lead attorney, smirked to himself. He had been preparing for months for this case, expecting to face off against some of the best legal minds money could buy. Instead, he was up against a businessman who thought he could outwit the system. It was almost insulting. Thornwald let out a small sigh, shaking her head. "Very well then, let's get on with it. Opening statements." She nodded toward Reeves. "Magnatech, you may begin." Reeves straightened his expensive suit and strode confidently to the bench. He was tall, polished, with slick-back gray hair and glasses that probably cost more than most people's monthly salaries. He adjusted his tie before addressing the judge with the smooth confidence of a man who had never lost a case. "Your Honor, ladies and gentlemen of the court," he began, his voice clear and authoritative, filling the room with ease. "This case is straightforward. My client, Magnatech Industries, spent years and millions of dollars developing a revolutionary new battery technology. They followed the law. They filed for a patent, and then, just weeks later, Musk Innovations, a company owned by the defendant, unveiled an identical product." Musk sat still, watching Reeves with a placid expression, as if he were watching a mildly interesting lecture rather than hearing accusations that could cost him his company. Reeves continued, pacing slowly, drawing in the jury. "This is not speculation, Your Honor. We have the patent, we have the blueprints, and most importantly," he clicked a remote, and the courtroom lights dimmed slightly as a massive screen behind him lit up with side-by-side diagrams. "We have proof." The images showed two nearly identical battery schematics, one labeled Magnatech Patent 108,726, the other Musk Innovations Prototype. The similarities were undeniable. The gasps from the gallery were audible. Judge Thornwald leaned forward slightly, scrutinizing the screen. Reeves let the moment settle before delivering the final blow. "Your Honor, the evidence will show that Mr. Musk's company did not innovate. They stole." He turned and walked back to his seat, confident, as though the case was already won. Thornwald turned her gaze toward Musk. "Mr. Musk, your opening statement?" Musk stood, adjusting his jacket, and approached the front of the courtroom. He pulled a handful of crumpled papers from his pocket and accidentally dropped one. A chuckle rippled through the courtroom. The richest man in the world couldn't even keep his documents together. Sorry about that, Your Honor," Musk muttered, bending down to retrieve the fallen paper, flipping through his notes in apparent confusion. Judge Thornwald exhaled slowly, pinching the bridge of her nose. "Mr. Musk, this isn't a rocket launch. In my courtroom, we follow proper legal procedure. Do you have your evidence prepared and organized?" Musk hesitated, shuffling his papers again, as if searching for something. "I think so, yes. Yes, I do." The gallery erupted in laughter. Even the bailiff cracked a rare smile. Judge Thornwald allowed herself a small smirk. This was going to be easier than she thought. At the plaintiff's table, Dominic Reeves shot Musk a look of smug satisfaction. This trial would be over in a matter of days. In the back of the courtroom, however, Lila Chen, Musk's head engineer, twisted her hands in her lap. Her gaze flickered nervously from Musk to the judge to the evidence screen. This wasn't going well. Why was Elon acting so unprepared? Judge Thornwald tapped her gavel once, bringing the courtroom back to order. "Magnatech, please proceed with your case." Reeves nodded, and his team of assistants wheeled in neatly labeled evidence boxes. The court lights dimmed as he loaded up his next digital presentation, preparing to bury Musk under a mountain of damning evidence. As the trial continued, Judge Thornwald leaned back in her chair, exchanging a glance with her clerk. This case was all but decided. Little did she know, the man sitting before her, the one dropping papers and appearing to be in over his head, wasn't nearly as unprepared as he seemed. Because behind his distracted glances, behind his quiet note-taking, behind every messy paper on his desk, a trap was being set. Dominic Reeves strode confidently back to the plaintiff's table, a smug smile playing on his lips. The opening statements had gone exactly as planned. The judge was already half convinced. The jury looked doubtful of Musk, and the media in the back of the room was scribbling furiously, likely preparing headlines about the tech mogul's embarrassing legal blunder. He was making this too easy. Judge Beatrice Thornwald adjusted her glasses and gave Musk a long, considering look. The billionaire was still flipping through his papers, barely seeming to listen to the case being built against him. She had dealt with countless overconfident executives before, men who thought they could talk their way out of trouble, who thought their money and influence made them untouchable. They always learned the hard way that the law didn't bend for wealth. "Magnatech, please proceed with your evidence," she instructed, her voice sharp and authoritative. Reeves nodded to one of his assistants, and the court lights dimmed as a large screen illuminated the room. The first slide appeared, a detailed timeline of Magnatech's patent process. "Your Honor, let's talk about facts," Reeves said, pacing before the jury with the practiced ease of a seasoned trial lawyer. "On March 15th of last year, my client, Magnatech Industries, filed a patent for a revolutionary new energy storage system. This was the result of 18 months of painstaking research, millions of dollars in development, and the work of an entire team of scientists and engineers." He clicked the remote again, and a new image appeared. Magnatech's battery prototype, sleek and compact, sitting in their testing lab. "This is our prototype, developed completely in-house." Reeves paused for effect before moving to the next slide, displaying an almost identical battery design. "And this is Musk Innovations' version, which just happened to appear in a press release 6 weeks later." There were audible gasps from the courtroom. The similarities were striking, practically indistinguishable. Even Judge Thornwald leaned in slightly, her interest piqued. "The theft of intellectual property is not just unethical, it is illegal," Reeves continued, his voice heavy with indignation. "And Mr. Musk's company did not just happen to create a similar design, they copied it. And today, We will prove beyond a shadow of a doubt that their actions were nothing short of corporate theft. At the defense table, Musk finally set his papers down. He adjusted his sleeve, let out a small breath, and looked up at the judge. His face gave nothing away. No fear, no frustration, just a calm detachment that made Thornwald's brow furrow. "Mr. Musk, are you following?" she asked, giving him a pointed look. Musk blinked, as if coming out of deep thought. "Oh, yeah, just considering the testimony." Reeves exhaled sharply. "If you're done considering." "Your Honor, I'd like to call our first witness, Dr. Alan Murphy, Magnatech's head of research and development." A thin man with wire-rimmed glasses and a nervous demeanor made his way to the stand. After being sworn in, he cleared his throat and adjusted his tie. "Dr. Murphy, could you please explain to the court your role in the development of Magnatech's battery?" Reeves prompted. "Yes, of course," Murphy said, his voice a little shaky at first. I led the team that designed and tested the nano-coating technology, which allows for vastly superior energy density and faster charging speeds. Our design was the result of years of careful experimentation. And was this technology in any way inspired by Mr. Musk's work? Absolutely not, Murphy said firmly. Our research predates his so-called prototype by over a year. There is no possible way he could have developed something so similar on his own in such a short period. Reeves nodded, satisfied. And, in your expert opinion, what are the chances that Musk Innovations independently created an identical battery? Murphy shook his head. 0. The odds are impossible. It's theft, plain and simple. The weight of the testimony settled over the courtroom. The jury exchanged uneasy glances. The evidence was damning. The case seemed airtight. Judge Thornwald turned toward Musk, expecting some sort of reaction. Maybe an objection, a defense, a counter-argument? Something. But Musk just sat there, arms crossed, head tilted slightly, as if he was merely watching a mildly interesting documentary. Thornwald's patience began to wear thin. "Mr. Musk, would you like to cross-examine the witness?" Musk finally stood, adjusting his jacket. He took his time walking toward the stand, his slow, deliberate movements making the tension in the room tighten like a coil. For a long moment he just stood there, studying Dr. Murphy. The scientist shifted uncomfortably in his seat under Musk's steady gaze. Then finally Musk spoke. "Dr. Murphy, I'm curious." He pulled out one of his crumpled papers, smoothing it out on the wooden railing. "You say your company has been working on this technology for 18 months. You're certain of that?" Murphy frowned. "Of course." Musk nodded, as if considering the answer. "And you're saying that my team, some of the best engineers in the world, couldn't have developed this independently?" Murphy scoffed. "That would be impossible." Musk lifted an eyebrow. "That's interesting, because according to these internal Magnatech emails," he pulled out another paper and waved it slightly, "it seems your company had nothing remotely resembling this technology before a very particular date." Reeves immediately stood up. "Objection, Your Honor. If Mr. Musk is claiming to have evidence, he should have submitted it properly." "Allow it," Judge Thornwald interrupted, intrigued. "Mr. Musk, what exactly are you getting at?" Musk smiled, but it wasn't the usual charming grin he gave reporters and investors. It was something else, something sharp, something deliberate. "Let's just say, I have reason to believe the truth is a little more complicated than Mr. Reeves would like it to be." The courtroom erupted in whispers. Judge Thornwald banged her gavel. "Enough. We will continue this in due process. Mr. Musk, you may proceed with your questioning." Musk nodded, returning his gaze to Dr. Murphy, who now looked significantly less confident. "Tell me, Doctor, what would you say if I told you that someone from Magnatech stole from me first?" The courtroom fell deathly silent. For the first time that day, Judge Thornwald found herself watching Musk not as a fool, but as a man who had just played his first move in a game no one else realized had already begun. A hush fell over the courtroom. Judge Beatrice Thornwald eyed Elon Musk with newfound suspicion, her earlier amusement now replaced by something far sharper: curiosity. She had thought him reckless, maybe even foolish, but there was a glint in his eyes now. Something deliberate, something dangerous. "Mr. Musk," she said, tapping her gavel lightly, "if you are implying Magnatech stole from you, then you had better have more than just innuendos to back it up." Musk smiled, the kind of smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. "Oh, I do, Your Honor. But timing is everything, isn't it?" Across the courtroom, Dominic Reeves' confidence wavered, just for a second. He was used to defendants panicking at this stage, scrambling for a defense. This was different. Musk wasn't scrambling. He was waiting. "Proceed with your questioning," Thornwald instructed, folding her hands under her chin, her tone less amused and more cautious now. Musk turned back to Dr. Alan Murphy, who sat stiffly in the witness chair, his earlier certainty now laced with nervous tension. "Dr. Murphy, you said Magnatech's team had been working on this energy storage technology for 18 months, correct?" "Yes, that's correct," Murphy answered, though his voice had lost some of its conviction. "And you're absolutely sure of that?" Murphy frowned. Yes, of course." Musk nodded, then turned to the large screen where Reeves' team had been displaying their evidence. "Your Honor, with the court's permission, I'd like to present something of my own." Reeves shot to his feet. "Objection, Mr. Musk hasn't submitted any formal evidence." "Overruled," Thornwald interrupted, eyes locked onto Musk. She wanted to see where this was going. "Mr. Musk, proceed." The screen flickered as Musk walked to the plaintiff's table. From the pocket of his suit, he pulled out a small USB drive, twirling it between his fingers before plugging it into the courtroom's display system. "This, ladies and gentlemen, is footage from inside my own facility," Musk said, his voice steady. "It was taken 6 months ago, and what you're about to see is very interesting." The screen flickered to life. The security footage was grainy but clear enough to recognize the sleek, sterile walls of Musk Innovations Research Lab. The timestamp in the bottom right corner read 6 months ago, 3 months before Magnatech filed their so-called patent. A figure appeared on the screen, a man in a tailored suit, shaking hands with Musk himself. Judge Thornwald narrowed her eyes. "Who is that?" Musk glanced at her, then at Victor Hammond, CEO of Magnatech, who had suddenly gone rigid in his chair. "That, Your Honor, is Mr. Victor Hammond." The room erupted in whispers. "Order," Judge Thornwald snapped, banging her gavel. "Continue, Mr. Musk." Musk gestured at the screen. "As you can see, this was the day Hammond came to my facility under the guise of discussing a potential partnership between Magnatech and Musk Innovations." The video played on. The footage showed Hammond touring the lab, his eyes scanning every piece of cutting-edge technology as Musk led him through. It looked innocent enough, until the screen flickered again, switching to a different camera angle. Now Hammond was standing near a restricted research area. His assistant, a woman with a tablet, was snapping discrete photos of a prototype battery module behind a glass wall. Reeves sputtered in his seat. "That proves nothing. He could have been taking notes, not stealing." Musk didn't even look at him. Instead, he clicked forward to the next slide. A Magnatech internal email chain, time-stamped 3 days after the visit. "Your Honor, this is an internal Magnatech email discussing the new initiative their team would be working on following Hammond's visit to my lab." The email's subject line was urgent, battery tech, fast-track development, and the message contained phrases like, "Implement Musk's nano-coding system," and "Reverse generating required." Thornwald leaned forward in her seat. She wasn't smiling anymore. "Where did you obtain this email, Mr. Musk?" Musk folded his hands. "It was provided to me by a former Magnatech employee who found the company's behavior ethically troubling." More whispers. Judge Thornwald turned to Reeves, whose face had gone from confident to stone-cold. "Mr. Reeves, would you like to respond?" Reeves straightened his jacket, masking his unease with forced indignation. "Your Honor, this is clearly a desperate ploy. If Mr. Musk wants to claim that my client stole his technology, he'll need more than circumstantial emails and a blurry video." Musk smirked. "I was hoping you'd say that." From his pocket, he produced another USB drive. Your Honor, this drive contains security logs from my facility, showing that Hammond and his team accessed restricted areas without authorization. And here, he pulled out a printed document, is an analysis proving that Magnatech's so-called patented design is structurally identical to mine, down to the microscopic layers of the nano-coating. Judge Thornwald took a long breath, then slowly removed her glasses. The courtroom had gone silent, as if everyone were collectively holding their breath. She finally turned to Victor Hammond, who sat motionless at the plaintiff's table, staring at the screen, as if he could will the evidence away. "Mr. Hammond," Thornwald said, her voice dangerously calm, "would you care to explain how Magnatech came to develop a patent identical to Musk Innovations' prototype after visiting Mr. Musk's lab?" Hammond swallowed, his lips pressed into a thin line. He didn't answer. Reeves leaned in to whisper to him, but Hammond shook his head, his fingers tightening around the edge of the table. Thornwald let the silence hang for a moment longer before speaking again. "Very well," she said, her voice crisp. "We will take a recess, and when we return, I will hear Magnatech's official response to these allegations." She banged her gavel sharply. The courtroom erupted. Reporters scrambled to file their updates. Analysts whispered among themselves. Magnatech had walked into this case thinking they were the ones setting a trap, but it was becoming very, very clear. Elon Musk had been playing a different game all along. The courtroom was still buzzing when Judge Beatrice Thornwald returned to her seat, her expression unreadable as she adjusted her glasses. Reporters had already begun typing out breaking news headlines about Musk's unexpected evidence. But the real storm was only just beginning. She banged her gavel once. "Order in the court!" The whispers died instantly. Judge Thornwald turned to the plaintiff's table, her sharp gaze locking onto Dominic Reeves, who sat rigidly, his jaw tight, his fingers tapping against the table. Next to him, Victor Hammond, the once confident CEO of Magnatech, looked far less polished than he had that morning. His collar was slightly loosened, his hands clasped together a little too tightly. "Mr. Reeves, your client has been accused of corporate espionage, and the evidence presented is substantial. Do you have a response?" Reeves, ever the smooth talker, stood with his usual polished confidence, but this time there was something forced about it. "Your Honor," he began, clearing his throat, "this entire performance by Mr. Musk is nothing more than a distraction, circumstantial at best. What we have here is a high-profile executive attempting to stir media attention rather than focus on the legal facts. His so-called evidence proves nothing." Musk, who had been silent and watching, now spoke. "Then let's put it to the test." Reeves froze for a split second, and Thornwald noticed it. A small hesitation. It was enough. Musk turned to Hammond, his expression neutral but his eyes sharp as a blade. "Mr. Hammond, since your attorney insists that I have no proof, why don't you clarify something for me?" Musk's voice was calm. Hammond didn't respond immediately. A bead of sweat had formed near his temple. "I'd be happy to," he finally said, though his voice lacked the power it once had. Musk picked up a printed document from his table, holding it between his fingers like it was a casual afterthought. "This is your company's internal patent filing, correct?" Hammond glanced at it, then nodded stiffly. "Yes, it is." Musk tilted his head slightly. "And this was submitted 3 months ago?" Another nod. "That's correct." Musk flipped the page over, tapping it against his palm. Then, with slow deliberation, he lifted another document. This one clearly aged, the pages creased and slightly yellowed. "And this," Musk said, his voice sharpening, "is the lab notebook of one of my lead engineers. It contains sketches and calculations, including the exact battery design that Magnatech patented. This entry was dated 6 months ago." Hammond stiffened. A hush fell over the courtroom as Judge Thornwald leaned forward, her eyes narrowing. "Let me get this straight," she said. "Mr. Musk, you are saying that your design predates Magnatech's patent application by 3 months?" "I'm not saying it, Your Honor," Musk replied, placing both documents side by side on the evidence table. "I'm proving it." Silence. And then Reeves, his confidence shaken but not shattered, jumped in. "Your Honor, this is meaningless. A handwritten note does not constitute a legal patent. There is no way to prove that this document wasn't fabricated after the fact." Musk turned to him, unfazed. "I was hoping you'd say that." He pulled out one final piece of paper. "This," he said, placing it on top of the others, "is a legally time-stamped email sent from my engineers to our patent attorney, dated 6 months ago, containing these exact schematics." A collective inhale swept through the courtroom. Judge Thornwald slowly removed her glasses. She studied the documents in front of her, her lips pressing together. Finally, she looked up at Hammond, who looked as if the walls were closing in around him. "Mr. Hammond," she said, her voice deceptively soft, "do you have an explanation?" Hammond licked his lips, shifting in his seat. Reeves quickly stepped in. "Your Honor, my client is under no obligation to answer questions without legal advisement. We request an immediate recess." Judge Thornwald studied them both, then looked at Musk, who simply stood there, watching, waiting. Then, finally, she sighed. "Very well. Court is in recess for 1 hour." She banged the gavel. But even as the courtroom emptied, everyone knew the walls were closing in on Magnatech. And Musk? He had them exactly where he wanted them. The 1-hour recess was supposed to give Victor Hammond and his legal team time to regroup, but instead it had only made their situation worse. In a private conference room adjacent to the courtroom, Hammond paced frantically, his polished confidence from earlier all but gone. Dominic Reeves, his lead attorney, sat stiffly at the table, his jaw clenched as he flipped through the documents Musk had presented. The evidence was overwhelming, too overwhelming. "This doesn't make sense," Hammond muttered, rubbing his temples. "This isn't how this was supposed to go." Reeves looked up, his expression grim. "We were outplayed. Musk played us from the start." Hammond stopped pacing. His head snapped up. "What do you mean?" Reeves exhaled sharply and leaned forward. "Think about it. From the very beginning, Musk acted unprepared. He let us believe he was fumbling, clueless. He wanted us to underestimate him, and we did. We got cocky." Hammond gritted his teeth, his mind racing. "So, what are you saying? We just give up?" Reeves was silent for a moment, then sighed. "I'm saying our best-case scenario is settling. If this keeps going, the judge could not only invalidate our patent, but issue an injunction that blocks us from working on similar technology for years. That would gut our entire energy division." Hammond's face darkened. "No." Reeves narrowed his eyes. "Victor?" "No." Hammond's voice was steel. "I will not let him walk out of here the hero while we crawl away in disgrace. We fight. We challenge everything. We discredit Musk's evidence, cast doubt on that lab notebook, and we go after that engineer Priya Nair." Reeves frowned. "Discrediting Nair is risky. If the court finds out we tried to intimidate her..." Hammond slammed his fist on the table. "I don't care what it takes." His eyes burned with fury. "I'm not letting Musk destroy me." Reeves held his gaze for a long moment, then nodded. "Then we go scorched earth." Back in the courtroom, the energy had shifted. Judge Beatrice Thornwald entered with a controlled but noticeable change in demeanor. She was taking this case more seriously than ever. Musk's evidence had made her reevaluate everything, and she was no longer amused by Hammond's presence. Hammond and Reeves returned to their seats, their expressions carefully masked. "Court is back in session," Judge Thornwald announced, her voice sharp. "Mr. Reeves, do you have any new motions before we continue?" Reeves stood. "Your Honor," he said smoothly, "we move to challenge the credibility of Mr. Musk's witness, Priya Nair. Given her recent departure from Magnatech, we believe she has a personal grudge against my client and a financial incentive to testify in Mr. Musk's favor." A sharp murmur rippled through the courtroom. Musk, who had remained silent up to this point, stood slowly. "Your Honor," he said, his voice firm, "this is a desperate attempt to deflect from the evidence we've provided. Priya Nair's testimony is backed by time-stamped documents and official Magnatech communications. Reeves didn't back down. She could have fabricated those documents after she left the company. We demand an independent forensic analysis. Judge Thornwald raised an eyebrow. You wish to imply that Ms. Nair, a former high-ranking scientist at Magnatech, falsified documents on a highly technical level just to take down your client? Reeves nodded. It's a possibility that must be considered. Judge Thornwald exhaled slowly and looked toward Musk. Mr. Musk, do you have a response? Musk turned slightly, nodding toward the back of the courtroom. A woman in a sleek gray suit stepped forward. Your Honor, I anticipated that Magnatech would attempt to challenge Ms. Nair's credibility. So, before today's hearing, I contacted an independent digital forensics firm to authenticate the documents she provided. A collective gasp swept through the courtroom. Judge Thornwald's gaze sharpened. Musk handed a thick folder to the court clerk, who delivered it to the judge. These reports confirm that the files were never modified after the dates in question. Every timestamp, every signature, every piece of metadata is intact. Judge Thornwald flipped through the pages. Reeves glanced nervously at Hammond. Mr. Reeves, she said, looking up, do you still wish to challenge Miss Nair's credibility? Reeves hesitated. Hammond, sitting beside him, clenched his jaw but gave a barely perceptible shake of his head. Reeves sighed. No, Your Honor. Judge Thornwald nodded and set the forensic report aside. She turned toward Musk. Mr. Musk, do you have anything else to present before I allow Mr. Reeves to question your witness? Musk smiled ever so slightly. Yes, Your Honor. One last thing. With deliberate care, Musk retrieved a small leather-bound notebook from his table. Hammond's face lost all color. Your Honor, Musk said, flipping the notebook open, this is Victor Hammond's personal journal. It was found in his former office. The courtroom erupted. Judge Thornwald banged her gavel. Order. Silence fell. Musk continued. This journal contains handwritten notes from Mr. Hammond himself, outlining plans to reverse engineer my company's battery design after his tour of my lab. It includes specific references to the exact materials, techniques, and strategic timeline that just so happened to match the patent Magnatech filed months later. Hammond lunged forward. That's private property, he roared. Judge Thornwald's gaze darkened. Mr. Hammond, she said, her voice like ice, I will not tolerate outbursts in my courtroom. Sit down. Hammond froze, then slowly sank back into his chair, his hands shaking. Judge Thornwald turned back to Musk. Mr. Musk, I assume you have verification that this notebook is in fact Mr. Hammond's. Musk handed over another document. A forensic handwriting analyst confirmed the writing matches multiple signed legal documents from Magnatech. Judge Thornwald took a long breath. She turned back to Reeves. Mr. Reeves, in light of this new evidence, do you still wish to continue your defense? Reeves looked defeated. I request a recess, Your Honor. Judge Thornwald glanced toward Musk, who simply watched, calm, composed. Denied. A stunned silence fell over the courtroom. She straightened her robes and looked back at Musk. Mr. Musk, prepare your closing arguments. I believe this case is nearly over. The air inside the courtroom was thick with tension, the kind of suffocating stillness that came before an earthquake. Judge Beatrice Thornwald sat unmoving, her sharp eyes fixed on the legal battlefield before her. She had seen dozens of high-profile cases in her 30-year career, but never one quite like this. Never had a defendant turned a seemingly unwinnable case into a masterclass in strategy. Across the room, Dominic Reeves was frantically flipping through his notes, searching for an escape route that didn't exist. His case, once a fortress of supposed irrefutable evidence, was collapsing, brick by brick, under the weight of Musk's revelations. The forensic authentication of the documents, the security footage proving espionage, the handwritten notes from Victor Hammond himself. It was a legal bloodbath. Hammond, however, refused to accept defeat. His breathing was shallow, his hands clenched into fists. He had built Magnatech into a multi-billion-dollar empire, crushing competitors along the way. He wasn't about to let it all fall apart because of a single courtroom ambush. He turned to Reeves and whispered sharply, "Do something." Reeves exhaled, straightening his tie as he stood. "Your Honor," he began, his voice steadier than his confidence, "we move to dismiss Mr. Musk's request for a development prohibition order on the grounds that it would create an unfair monopoly." Judge Thornwald raised an eyebrow. "A monopoly?" "Yes, Your Honor," Reeves continued, grasping at straws now. "If this 5-year ban is granted, Musk Innovations would be the sole company developing this technology, which would stifle competition and harm consumers." Musk stood immediately, his expression calm but unyielding. "Your Honor, this is not about stifling competition. This is about preventing theft. If companies can steal innovations and only face a fine, they'll treat it as a cost of doing business. The law must have teeth, and Section 47B of the Technological Innovation Protection Act provides those teeth." Judge Thornwald tapped her fingers against her desk, considering. She turned to Reeves. "Mr. Reeves, your argument would be valid if Magnatech had developed this technology independently, but the evidence suggests otherwise. I have no reason to believe your client would compete fairly, even if I were to deny the ban." Reeves swallowed hard. Victor Hammond could no longer contain his frustration. He slammed his hands on the table, his voice dripping with venom. "This is a joke. This entire case is based on manipulated evidence and testimony from a bitter ex-employee." Judge Thornwald's gaze turned ice cold. "Mr. Hammond, I have warned you about outbursts in my courtroom. Do it again, and I will hold you in contempt." Hammond's face burned red, his power slipping from his grasp. He turned to Reeves, his desperation barely masked. "We are not losing to him," he hissed under his breath. Musk, watching silently, felt no need to respond. He had already won. Judge Thornwald took a deep breath. "Mr. Musk," she said finally, "I am prepared to rule on your request for a development prohibition order. However, I will allow the defense to make one final counter-argument." Reeves, seeing the thin opportunity, rose again. "Your Honor, I request that we be given additional time to present an independent expert to refute Mr. Musk's evidence." Musk raised an eyebrow. "An independent expert," Judge Thornwald repeated. "Your case is collapsing, Mr. Reeves. You had ample opportunity to present experts before today." "Yes, Your Honor, but given the unexpected allegations against my client, we need more time to prepare a proper response." Judge Thornwald looked unimpressed. She turned to Musk. "Mr. Musk, your response." Musk simply shook his head. "There is no justification for more delays, Your Honor. We both know this is a last-ditch attempt to avoid the inevitable." Judge Thornwald sighed. Musk was right. She looked at Reeves. "Your request for an extension is denied." The final blow. Reeves sat down, defeated. Hammond slumped in his chair, rage simmering beneath the surface. His empire was crumbling, and there was nothing he could do to stop it. Judge Thornwald straightened, her presence commanding the room. "This court has heard extensive testimony and reviewed substantial evidence. The facts are clear. It is my ruling that Magnatech Industries engaged in corporate espionage and patent fraud." A hush fell over the courtroom. Judge Thornwald turned to Musk. "Mr. Musk, your request for a development prohibition order is granted. Magnatech Industries is hereby prohibited from developing, marketing, or selling similar energy storage technology for the next 5 years." Gasps rippled through the gallery. Reporters scrambled to type updates. Musk had done it. Judge Thornwald wasn't finished. "Furthermore," she continued, "Magnatech will pay $20 million in damages to Musk Innovations and cover all legal expenses related to this case." Reeves paled. Hammond looked like he had been punched in the gut. The final nail in the coffin. Judge Thornwald adjusted her glasses. "And finally, given the overwhelming evidence of Magnatech's wrongdoing, I am referring this case to the U.S. Attorney's Office for review of potential criminal charges." The courtroom exploded in murmurs. Hammond's eyes widened in horror. Criminal charges? He whispered. Judge Thornwald turned to him. Yes, Mr. Hammond. Theft of trade secrets, falsification of records, and perjury are serious crimes. The law applies to everyone. Hammond's fingers curled into fists. His power, his legacy, everything was slipping away. Musk, meanwhile, remained still. He didn't celebrate, didn't smirk. He had simply done what needed to be done. Judge Thornwald banged her gavel. Court is adjourned. The case was over. Musk turned to Leela Chen, his trusted engineer, who had been silently supporting him the entire trial. She looked at him, eyes wide with amazement. Elon, you just changed everything. Musk exhaled slowly. He wasn't interested in revenge, only justice. And justice had been served. The sound of the gavel still echoed in Victor Hammond's mind as he stormed out of the courtroom, his once imposing frame hunched with defeat. His empire, built on decades of shrewd business dealings and cutthroat strategies, was now a sinking ship. The 5-year development ban, the $20 million fine, the looming threat of criminal charges. It was more than just a loss. It was a complete annihilation. He clenched his fists as he stepped into the hallway, flanked by reporters hungry for a reaction. Mr. Hammond, do you have a comment on the ruling? Are you planning to appeal? What do you say to allegations of corporate espionage? Their voices buzzed around him like a swarm of angry wasps, but he ignored them. His mind was racing, desperate for a way out. Dominic Reeves caught up to him, his face pale and drawn. The once confident attorney had been humiliated in front of the entire legal community. We need to talk, Reeves said in a low voice, leading Hammond into a side corridor away from prying cameras. Hammond turned to him, his eyes burning with fury. How the hell did this happen? Reeves adjusted his tie, stalling for time. We underestimated him. Hammond scoffed, his temper boiling over. We were played. He made us think he was unprepared while he laid a trap for us. I should have seen it. Reeves sighed. We have bigger problems than Musk right now. The judge referred this to the U.S. Attorney's Office. This could turn into criminal charges. Hammond froze. The realization hit like a sledgehammer. Corporate fines were one thing. They were part of the game. But criminal charges? That was a death sentence. We need to get ahead of this, Reeves continued. If they open an investigation, the DOJ could tear through Magnatech's records. If there's anything else, anything they can use against you. Hammond cut him off, his voice dangerously low. Are you saying I should run? Reeves hesitated. I'm saying you need a strategy, fast. Hammond's jaw tightened. He was not a man who went down without a fight. He had spent years crushing competition, bending laws, buying influence. He had connections, powerful ones, and he wasn't about to let Elon Musk destroy everything he built. We need leverage, he muttered. Reeves frowned. Against who? Hammond's eyes darkened. Musk. The judge, the media, everyone who thinks this is over. Elon Musk stepped into the quiet of his temporary legal office, where Leela Chen had been watching the ruling unfold on live news feeds. She turned as he entered, her expression a mixture of exhaustion and triumph. You did it, she said softly. Musk nodded. We did it. She exhaled, shaking her head. I still can't believe it. You took down Magnatech. You exposed Hammond. You set a precedent that's going to change how tech companies handle innovation theft forever. Musk sat down, rubbing his temples. He was tired, but his mind was already moving forward. Not just tech companies, he murmured. Big corporations everywhere. If the courts start enforcing real consequences for industrial espionage, it changes the entire game. Layla sat across from him. So, what happens now? Musk looked at her, his blue eyes sharp. Hammond's not done. She frowned. What do you mean? He just lost everything. Musk leaned back. Guys like him, they don't accept defeat. He's going to try something, whether it's a legal loophole, political pressure, or something more underhanded. Layla hesitated. Do you think he's that desperate? Musk didn't answer immediately. Instead, he opened his laptop and pulled up an email. It was from an anonymous source. The subject line was chilling. "They're coming after you." Layla's heart skipped a beat. Who sent that? Musk's lips pressed into a thin line. Someone on the inside. Someone who knows Hammond isn't walking away quietly. He turned the laptop toward her. The email contained leaked messages between Magnatech executives. They were discussing options, ways to retaliate against Musk, ways to bury the ruling in appeals, ways to discredit key witnesses. Leela's stomach turned. He's still playing dirty. Musk nodded. And we need to be ready. Across town, Hammond sat in his penthouse office, staring at the city skyline, his mind calculating his next move. A burner phone sat on his desk. He picked it up, dialing a number that was unlisted, untraceable. The line clicked. "We have a problem," Hammond said. A voice on the other end replied, calm and controlled. "Do you need it handled?" Hammond hesitated for only a moment. Then he made his choice. "Yes," he said. "Make sure Musk doesn't win the war." Elon Musk stood at the window of his office, staring out at the Los Angeles skyline. The city stretched endlessly before him, a world built on ambition, innovation, and power. And in that world there were always those who played by the rules, and those who tried to bend them until they broke. Victor Hammond was the latter. Musk had won the battle in court, but the war wasn't over. The anonymous warning email was proof of that. Hammond wasn't done, and Musk knew better than to wait for the enemy to strike first. Behind him, Layla Chen sat at a desk, scrolling through newly leaked files. She had spent the past few hours decrypting information from a whistleblower inside Magnatech, someone who had seen enough of Hammond's corruption and wanted out. "Elon, you need to see this," she said, her voice tense. Musk turned, his sharp eyes locking onto the screen. It was an internal memo from Magnatech's legal team, dated the night before the ruling. "If we lose, initiate Plan D." Layla looked up at him. They were preparing for defeat. Musk's jaw clenched. "What's Plan D?" Layla hesitated, then clicked to the next document. A list of individuals. Musk, Judge Thornwald, Priya Nair. Names of key players in the trial, and next to each name, instructions. Discredit, silence, intimidate, destroy. A cold chill ran down Musk's spine. "This isn't just an appeal," Layla whispered. "Hammond is going after everyone who exposed him." Musk exhaled slowly. He had expected retaliation, but this was war. Musk moved quickly. He picked up his phone and made 2 calls. The first was to Judge Thornwald. She answered on the second ring. "Mr. Musk," she said, her tone steady but sharp, "I assume this isn't a social call." Musk got straight to the point. "Hammond is coming after you." A pause. Then, calmly, she asked, "What do you have?" Musk sent her the leaked documents. There was no time for hesitation. Minutes later, she called back. "This is enough for an emergency injunction," she said, "and I'll personally ensure that the DOJ fast-tracks an investigation into Hammond." Musk nodded. Step 1, neutralize Hammond's ability to move freely. Done. The second call was to Priya Nair. She answered, her voice laced with anxiety. "Elon, I think someone's watching me." Musk's fingers tightened around his phone. "Get to a secure location. I'll send a team." Priya had risked everything to expose Magnatech's fraud. She wasn't going to become a casualty now. Musk called in private security and sent her immediate protection. Meanwhile, Victor Hammond sat in his office, swirling an expensive glass of whiskey, contemplating his next move. His phone rang, a number he didn't recognize. "Speak," he commanded. But the voice on the other end wasn't his fixer. It was a federal agent. "Mr. Hammond, we have a warrant for your arrest. Please remain where you are." Hammond's blood ran cold. He barely had time to react before his office doors burst open. Federal agents poured in, weapons drawn, seizing documents and servers. Reeves, his lawyer, stood frozen in horror. "Victor, we're finished," he whispered. Hammond barely heard him. The walls were caving in. The game was over. Back at Musk Innovations, Layla refreshed her screen. A breaking news alert flashed across the monitor. Magnatech CEO Victor Hammond arrested for corporate espionage and fraud. She turned to Musk, grinning. "Looks like we won." Musk allowed himself a small smile. "This wasn't about winning," he said. "It was about proving that power and money don't put you above the law." Leela nodded. "So, what's next?" Musk looked out the window at the horizon, already thinking ahead. "Now, we build." And with that, he turned back to his work. Because while others played dirty games in courtrooms, Musk was always looking at the bigger picture, the future. Elon Musk's battle in the courtroom wasn't just about patents. It was a lesson in resilience, strategy, and justice. This story proves that powerful corporations can't always get away with deception, and that true innovation must be earned, not stolen. In today's world, where corporate espionage and unethical tactics are all too common, this case serves as a warning to those who think they can manipulate the system, and an inspiration for those who dare to stand up for what's right. If this story left you inspired, don't forget to like this video, share it with friends, and subscribe to the channel for more powerful stories of intelligence, determination, and unexpected victories. Let's keep spreading stories that remind us that, in the end, truth and innovation always win. See you in the next video.